Welcome back. All right, so 32 team video for today. Today's 32 team video is on injuries, right? Players who get hurt. And so I've came up with a list of 32 players that, if you're a fan of these teams, you're really hoping don't get hurt this year. And I'll even get into why. So that being said, we start with Ottawa. We ended with Chicago because we're doing this in a random order yet again. I do enjoy doing it in random orders. It's just I just find it more interesting than going through the exact same 32 in the exact same order every time. I do appreciate though the NHL keeps expanding so that there's more teams to put on the board. So nice of them to do that. All right, so we're going to start off with Ottawa. For Ottawa, say Batherson. I had thought about Pinto, but Pinto, it's more of a third line thing. I think Batherson, top six forward, being paid good money. And so you cross your fingers and hope he doesn't get hurt this year. Batherson, I think, is ready to have a breakout season along the lines of maybe 75, maybe 80 points. He does have that level of talent. So if you're an Ottawa fan and you're looking forward to things being a little more competitive this year, you need a guy like Batherson to stay healthy. For San Jose, Erik Karlsson. Karlsson, of course, we know has had injury problems over the years. Now that they've traded out Brent Burns, Karlsson is more vital to the offense from the blue line, and they really can't afford to lose him for any period of time. So you're A, hoping for a really strong season from Karlsson, and B, that it is a healthy season from Karlsson if San Jose is going to get themselves into the hunt for a playoff spot, which appears unlikely, but there's usually an unlikely team that breaks through any given season, so maybe San Jose. For Winnipeg, I didn't have to look this one over for very long. I went with Nick Ehlers. Ehlers is a player that when he's healthy and he's going, he could be a 35-40 goal scorer. Absolutely phenomenal work ethic from Ehlers. Got to stay healthy. For the Winnipeg Jets to get back into the playoffs, they need guys like Ehlers to stay healthy. And I know it's something that I think derailed them at certain points last year was injuries, where and when and who. But yeah, so for the Winnipeg Jets, Ehlers was the player that I picked. But again, I don't think there's a wrong answer on this. It's just one of those videos where it's kind of fun to talk about players that do tend to get injured here and there and how you want to see them stay healthy. Which brings me to Vegas. And there were a few guys I could have picked for Vegas. But I'm going to go with the blue line. And there's a reason I'm picking Martinez. Alec Martinez, very good defenseman. They're going to be playing in front of Logan Thompson. They're going to be playing in front of Laurent Brossoit. And so having a defense that's able to limit chances against, limit shots against, could be huge for the Vegas Golden Knights and their success this year. So having Martinez in the lineup, shot blocking and playing the game he normally does, is very, very key for a Vegas team that absolutely got decimated by injuries. Two top guys. It felt like it was always the key guys that were getting hurt. So Martinez is the pick for me, but there are numerous players from Vegas you could choose. For Edmonton, player who hasn't played a game for them yet, but is Jack Campbell. Stuart Skinner getting the shot at the backup job. At this point, he's still the number two. You don't want to see Campbell get hurt. This is a team that went through a lot of injury issues with Smith, and of course Smith, Koskinen, there was a lot of problems. You want a smooth transition to Campbell and Skinner, and you want Campbell to be as healthy as possible. He showed in the first half of the season for Toronto last year how well Campbell can play, but he needs to be able to do that over a full season. And again, staying healthy is really a big part of it. For Buffalo, I went with one who seems to miss time almost every year, and that's Alex Tuch. If Tuch could reverse that trend and get into, say, 78 games. I'm not saying not get hurt at all. Just get into 78 games. If Tuch can play at that level, play at the level he did last season and get into that many games, Buffalo's going to be that much better off. So for Tuch, you're looking for a healthy season. For Seattle, the player for Seattle I have a jersey of. Because when they came into the league, I was like, well, if I'm going to get a Seattle jersey, who would I get? Jaden Schwartz. I like Jaden Schwartz. And I still do, but he doesn't stay healthy for full seasons. And so you're looking for a lot more games from Schwartz, which likely would result in more goals and points, obviously. And so, yeah, to me, it's Schwartz for Seattle. For Calgary, I went with I thought about going with Tanev, but he's already out. I'm going with Kadri. Now Nazem Kadri has missed time. Now he's missed time with suspensions as well, right? But he misses time with injuries too. The way that some of these guys play the game, injuries are always going to be a hazard. But for Kadri and the amount of money they've put into Kadri and the term, at the very least, this first year of the contract, you want him to remain healthy. You want him to anchor that second line. And so, if Nazem Kadri can play, I'll say 78 games for him too. Why not? Again, I'm allowing for 4 games for bumps and bruises along the way and needing to be held out. But you want to see Kadri playing a lion's share of the games for Calgary this year. If he gets hurt, I would have some concerns about the depth down the middle, maybe possibly. That being said, of course, you still have Backlund. But yeah, Kadri would be my pick for the Flames. I would have picked Tanev, but Tanev's already hurt to start the season. For Pittsburgh to me is relatively straightforward. Now, they've lost Crosby in previous seasons and done well. They have. They've played well when Crosby gets hurt. But you really want him to play a full season, right? I thought about putting Malkin up there. The thing with Malkin is he's going to miss time. Like Crosby, you have maybe a chance that he's going to play 75 plus games. May very well be able to do that. Malkin, probably not going to get 75 games. You're probably going to get maybe 68 out of him, right? So yeah, Crosby's my pick, but Malkin's an honorable mention. And I guess Letang too. I mean, these guys are all in their mid to late 30s and injuries happen. And when you get older, it takes some extra time to come back. Trust me. So yeah, we'll see how things go for Pittsburgh, a team that is another one that seems to get key injuries at the wrong time. But I went with Crosby. For Carolina, a player who hasn't played a game for them this year, please, Ondrej Kase. Please, for the love of all that's holy, have a healthy season. I know, dating back to his time in Anaheim, that's been a problem. It has been a problem the whole way through. But I'm an optimist. I think that at some point in time, Ondrej Kase can go through a season, play 82 games, score 20 goals. I mean, it's not that likely, but why not, right? So Kase is my pick for a Carolina team that is favored to win their division this year. Dallas. There are a few picks I could have made, but I went with Marchment. Mason Marchment, who didn't play every game last year. For the amount of money and for the contract that he got from Dallas, they want him to be healthy. And considering that they bring him in for improved offense and they need that offensive depth, if Marchment was to be out for an extended period of time, that could really hurt Dallas's attack for the entire time that he's out. So we'll see. And I mean, there's a whole argument too about whether or not Marchment can follow up the season he just had for Dallas. But yeah, I'm going to go with Marchment there. Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was relatively easy as well. For all of the discussions about LTIR and everything, I don't think Tampa Bay wants to see Kucherov get hurt. Kucherov, of course, one of their best players. He is. I think he's already put together probably a Hall of Fame resume. If he retired tomorrow, I think he'd probably get there. But Kucherov, if he could have a healthy season, that would be great. I thought about putting Stamkos up there as well. But yeah, Kucherov, to me, is the guy that you want to see him stay in the lineup for that full 82 games if possible. Moving on to Nashville. Nashville, you just re-signed him. He just got a huge deal. He has missed time over the last couple of years. You want Forsberg to stay healthy. Again, pretty straightforward. I think for Forsberg, if he can play that magic number, again, to me, 75 games and higher is where you look at and go, okay, so he had a pretty healthy season. Which means I'm allowing for like 7 games, which is 2.5 weeks of time, usually. And so, yeah, Forsberg, we'll see if he gets there. Montreal, and the reason I'm wearing Montreal, they had the most man games lost to injury last year of any team in the league. And for Montreal, I'm going with a player who has yet to play for them, and that's Kirby Dach. Dach just signed that new contract today. The Montreal Canadiens, I think, are looking forward to seeing what he can do in their lineup. It does mean he has to stay in said lineup. He needs to be healthy. And so, yeah, Kirby Dach to me is the guy for Montreal that they want to make sure he stays healthy. They've invested a lot in terms of time and assets in order to pick Dach up. So we'll see how things go. But he would be my pick for the Montreal Canadiens. On to Anaheim. Anaheim, of course, not a team that's in a playoff spot. But I mean, just in general, a bounce back season from Silverberg would be huge. Silverberg, it was not a great year for him in Anaheim last year, and injuries were a part of that too. So if he could stay healthy and that production comes back, it would go a long way for an Anaheim team. That it does feel like the worst of it is over, that they've gotten past the really tough point in that rebuild where it just your team is just bad. And it feels like Anaheim's not there anymore. And if Silverberg can play a good, strong, healthy season, that would help. Going to Philadelphia. For Philadelphia, Sean Couturier. So one thing about this list, there are some players that I'm putting up on this board that I've had in other 32 team videos lately. That's going to be a thing. I'm not overly concerned with it. In this case, I can justify putting Couturier on the board because he only played, 29 games this past year? And he's an excellent two-way forward. We can talk a lot about Philadelphia and how bad they are and how the prospects don't look great for next season. But if Couturier is in the lineup and he's healthy, that helps. There are a lot of other things in Philadelphia that would have to go right for them to get back into contention, but having Couturier in the lineup would be a huge boost to that team. Getting to Minnesota. For Minnesota, I went with a blue liner, Spurgeon. When they miss Spurgeon, it shows. When Spurgeon's not in the lineup, it absolutely has a negative impact on that defense. I like Spurgeon quite a bit. He is one of those players that if you watch him night in and night out, you start to like him more. There are players that the more attention you pay to them, the more you go, there are some holes in this guy's game. Spurgeon, to me, is not that guy. It's the other way around, where you may not be all that enamored with the stats, but you watch him night in and night out, he's pretty good. So Minnesota absolutely needs him healthy. For Toronto, going with another blue liner here, Jake Muzzin. Toronto's blue line is better than people make it sound. I think Toronto and Vancouver, both teams, have better blue lines than people make it sound. And Edmonton, while we're talking about Canadian teams, I'll throw in Edmonton too. All three of those teams, I think, have better defenses than they get credit for. If Muzzin's healthy for Toronto, they have a pretty solid defense. If their defense can stay healthy, and of course that includes Muzzin, that would be huge. And so I'm really, really hopeful that Muzzin's able to make this work. I do like Jake Muzzin. And for Toronto, again with that underrated blue line, I think if it's healthy, I think they could be top 5 in the league. Not that anybody would pay a lot of attention. It's really going to be about the first round, isn't it? It wouldn't matter. They could go 82-0 and people would still say, yeah, but the playoffs. So there's that. For New Jersey, has to be Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes missed a lot of time. Jack Hughes is ready to be one of the prominent forwards in the league, one of the best superstars in the game, but he has to stay in the lineup. And that seems really, really basic to say that, but it is important for a team in New Jersey's position where they're trying to climb that ladder. Hughes has to be in the lineup. And, I mean, Hischier as well. Both Hughes and Hischier have had their injury issues in their young careers, which has negatively impacted the New Jersey Devils. Both players need to be healthy, but I put Hughes on the board because there's more explosive offense there with Hughes than you get with Hischier. Both very good forwards, though. For Detroit, I went with somebody who hasn't played a game yet. That's David Perron. David Perron missed some games for St. Louis last year. Again, on the older side, a lot of the players on this board are going to be veterans and older players. And so how banged up is Perron? What can Detroit expect of him? And that also includes how many games will he get into? Will he play 75 games? Will he play 65? And again, for a Detroit team that I think depth-wise is still building itself up, losing Perron could be huge for them. So him being healthy could go a long way to keeping them in the playoff hunt. Maybe they get above the playoff line. For Arizona, Schmaltz. I went with Schmaltz. Schmaltz is very, very effective. He also does get hurt. There's those players. There's going to be players on this board who within, I'll say the first 2 weeks, I may even take a picture of this board and just to keep track of, okay, so which of these players is hurt and when. And maybe we can talk about it next summer as to which one lasted the longest without getting hurt and which one didn't get hurt at all. So Schmaltz would be my pick from Arizona. It does feel like he gets hurt often. And so, yeah, Schmaltz is a guy that if Arizona is going to win more than... I mean, they're probably going to win about 20 games anyways because of their competitiveness and the fact their coach gets the most out of them. But having a healthy Schmaltz in the lineup have to be worth a couple of wins. Colorado, I went with relatively obvious one. Nathan MacKinnon. MacKinnon, who does get hurt as well. McKinnon's had his share of injuries along the way. And so, as you're defending Stanley Cup champions and you've lost Nazem Kadri, you really need MacKinnon to stay healthy. Because if you lose MacKinnon and they haven't replaced Kadri, they can replace him from within, but would Alex Newhook then be on the first line? Does JT Compher end up on the first line? Yeah, the pressure on MacKinnon is, I think, higher than it was last year because you don't have Kadri as the fallback if/when MacKinnon would get hurt. For Columbus, I went with a player who had a good year, but Laine only got into 56 games. So he scored a point per game, but he also missed 26 games. So if you can resolve the 26 games missed this coming season, you might get 45 goals out of Laine. You might get 50. He has the talent to get to 50. The consistency's been an issue with Laine, but injuries. They have to keep him off the IR if they're going to get better as well. Adding Gaudreau's great, right? But you also need a healthy Laine there if you're really going to compete in the Metro Division. For Florida, I went with one of the more underrated defensemen in the league, and that's Aaron Ekblad. Ekblad, absolutely fantastic defenseman. Would have been in the running for the Norris if he played every game last year. I'm not saying he would have been top 3 because he wouldn't have, but top 10, sure. Top 5, maybe. Ekblad is an underrated player, and he really needs to play in those games. He really needs to play, I will say, that 75 game plus number, and I think this could be a year that he really finally gets that recognition from a Norris Trophy contention perspective. Boston, I actually kind of went back and forth on Boston. So here's Patrice Bergeron. The one thing with Bergeron is, when he's hurt, the Bruins have a pretty good record. He gets hurt most years, but when he's out, the Bruins have a pretty good record. The one thing is, this past year, they didn't really have that David Krejci to back up Bergeron when he gets hurt. This year, they have Krejci back, but both players now above 35 years of age. And so I think it's more important now that Bergeron stay healthy. And I say this while also acknowledging that they're without McAvoy, they're without Marchand as well. So with the team that's already dealing with so many prominent players being hurt, Bergeron has to be there. So gotta wrap him in bubble wrap, keep him away from anything dangerous off the ice. And just make sure he's healthy. St. Louis, I went with Brayden Schenn. Brayden Schenn, and again, they've lost Perron. For St. Louis, they're going to need all hands on deck this year. If the expectation is to get back into contention for a Stanley Cup, you want Brayden Schenn to be healthy. Schenn, one of their better forwards, not just from a scoring perspective either. I think there's various things he brings to the team, and so they need Schenn healthy. Apologies for any kind of repetition, but it really does come down to, if this team's going to succeed, they're probably going to want these guys in the lineup more often than not, right? That's why I'm not putting up a bunch of number 6, number 7 defensemen and, players that may or may not make it. These are key guys. And so with St. Louis, I feel like Schenn is one of those really key guys. When he's not in the lineup, they really miss him. For the New York Rangers, I went with, and this is really for his development as much as anything else, Kaapo Kakko has to play games. He has to play as many games as he can. And honestly, this has to be right out of the gate in October. They need him to stay healthy. They need him to get off to a good start too. This is a big year for Kakko. If he both struggles offensively and misses a bunch of games, I do wonder how long the Rangers will hold on to him. And I do wonder about his NHL future. But if he can play, and if that offense shows up as well, then it bodes well for his next contract, right? So for Kakko, really, really big key season for him. So we shall see. And I may do a video on that too. 32 young players looking at big key seasons. And contracts could be one of the reasons why a player's looking at a key season and whether or not they can earn themselves a big raise. For Washington, so the odds of Oshie having a bounce-back season where he's healthy, well, it depends. So he had a decent playoffs, but, it's a small sample size with the playoffs, right? Oshie is older, And so it does mean that, once you start to experience injuries and you're an older veteran, you're probably going to continue to have injury issues. But I'm going to go ahead and be an optimist and put Oshie's name on the board and say, hey, he can get to that magical number, which I'm putting at 75 games. You're going to get your points out of him. Oshie is still an important forward to a Washington team that I don't feel like has given up on the idea of going on another run in the playoffs. As long as Ovechkin's there, I think that's going to be seen as an option to the team. For Vancouver, I went with a favorite of mine, Brock Besser. Now, Sports Forecaster has Besser projected to have 40 goals this year. Bless their hearts. I'm going to say this. I don't expect 40 goals out of Besser, but it would really, really help if he can stay healthy. Injuries have derailed good seasons. Injuries have derailed good runs. So when you look at Besser's numbers, they are underwhelming, and a lot of that I feel like is due to injury. So if he can stay healthy, and again, it is that really good start that can have that impact on your season, then Besser might earn himself some extra ice time and some extra kudos from the team and from his coach, and maybe he gets to 30 goals this year. I'm not going to say 40 because I can't say it with a straight face. Part of the reason being, you can kind of bank on at least 10 games missed with injury when it comes to Besser. So this would be a really good year for him to end up playing every game, because I think that would be nice. And a 30-goal season, I don't think it's too much to ask that 30 times a year I can run over and do the little Brock Besser celebration I do when he scores a goal. I think that might be fun. I only did it 23 times this past year. I need more Brock Besser celebrations. For the New York Islanders, Pollock. Could have had Pollock up here, but Pollock. On the blue line, he is such a key guy. He is really the driving force on that blue line. Excellent player. And so, to me, Pollock is the guy who they really need to have in the lineup every night. And, yeah, that would be my pick for them. The LA Kings, I went with one that might seem kind of obvious. I felt bad for Drew Doughty this past season. Doughty was clearly miffed that he wasn't on the short list for Team Canada for the Olympics. Now, NHLers didn't end up going to the Olympics, but a miffed Drew Doughty is a good Drew Doughty. He actually had a pretty good year this past year. So for Doughty, if he can come into camp and if he can come in and be healthy this year, and still have that chip on his shoulder, I think Doughty can be an excellent asset to the LA Kings. Got to stay healthy. And for a Kings team that didn't have him in the playoffs this past year, what happens if he's in the playoffs? What happens in a series against Edmonton if you have Doughty on the blue line, right? So I really think if he can be healthy and help them get back into the playoffs, he could be really key for them in said playoffs in 2023. But again, good health is important. With Chicago, so their goaltending is going to be interesting to watch. Very, very interesting to watch. Go ahead and make sure I'm not misspelling this. Be easy enough for me to do so, especially while I'm yapping at the camera. That's definitely a thing. But yeah, Mrazek. It may be a throwaway season for Chicago. This may very well be a season where they're like, well, we would really like to have Bedard, so if we're going to lose, we're going to lose. But it's an important season for Mrazek. He needs to have a strong season. Because now he's bouncing around the league and his numbers have not been great the last couple of years. So he needs to have a strong season, and having a strong season would also involve being healthy. So regardless of what the expectations for Chicago are, regardless of what his expectations are, he does need to stay healthy. And even if this is a matter of improving his stock so they can trade him, so be it. But, yeah, they need Mrazek to be healthy. Part of the reason that the Toronto Maple Leafs move on from him, likely due to the fact that he does get injured regularly. There may be other reasons there as well for Toronto. I'm sure Leaf fans have an opinion on that, on Peter Mrazek and his goaltending. But, yeah, I think for him in particular, he needs to stay healthy. It's not as much a Chicago thing, because I really think for Chicago this year it is kind of a throwaway year. But we'll find out soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Which player you think is important that they have a season that is free of injury. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.